96 FM.
Eoghan Corry from Air and Travel magazine. The cat is truly among the pigeons now, Eoghan, isn't it? With this set to between NEFIT, the government, and the travel industry. Good morning.
Yeah, and it's not just the travel industry. Let's face it, the problem is caused by the fact that where there was a structured, or as structured as you can get in the current uncertainty plan to return to opening borders, to getting travelling again. May the 27th, it took a while to get it going, but May the 27th was when the EU Commission launched their plan. The target date was June the 15th. Quite a lot of the countries made it. The aviation industry came out with their plan on June the 12th. The European Air Safety Authority, in conjunction with European Central Disease Control. So all of this was happening, and we seem to have got sidetracked in what has turned into this set two that you're talking about, where the NFIT, obviously there'll always be conflicts with NFIT advice on when to reopen hairdressers, all those sort of issues. But on international travel, over the last week, we've seen what are really personal opinions being floated out as official policy. The official policy hasn't changed, and one well-founded as the medical opinions are, which are basically, they're scientists, they're medics, their idea is to whittle the risk all the way down to 0%. It's not official policy, and people are cancelling their holidays on something that is not official policy. It's basically a personal opinion.
Well, it's a personal opinion based on many, many scientific and medical opinions. He's just the face of NEFIT, as June was saying.
Absolutely. There's a great
got 40 members.
A collective of people who will, sharing that opinion. But the science is chasing the risk, assessing the risk. The pulling up of the drawbridge or the letting down of the drawbridge, that's not science. That's a decision which factors in all the checks and balances that those decisions entail.
What do you make of Aer Lingus' decision to start pulling flights from yesterday that were supposed to go in July and August?
I suspect that may be load factor related. The bookings were, everybody was uncertain about them. And I do think that Ryanair are more feisty about their decision to put aircraft back in the sky. They were going to fly them basically empty if they needed to.
Which, of course, puts an awful lot, as Pat Dawson was saying, puts the consumer into the meat and the sandwich, where they have spent money and it's gone because the flight is off the ground, even if, like you say, it's empty.
This is the new era we're in, or the new phase we're in. We'd better leave that to the medical people, because that's the more serious phase lifting. But this is the new policy we're in, where while the flights were cancelled, the whole refund and voucher thing, that particular circus got going, and everybody knows that they've been very, very slow, but they are coming through. Now we're in a situation where if you don't show up, you're treated like it was summer 2019 and you missed your flight, which it isn't, because the Department of Foreign Affairs is saying don't fly to any of these countries. We haven't seen the red list and the green list, which are supposedly being drawn up way after everybody else had talked about them, by the way. And we have the consumer saying this is a huge investment. We also have, Europe treating European tourism almost as a domestic product, the same way as going to Kerry on your holidays is domestic. The European Commission plan wanted us to get to Spain and Portugal because they see the economy as a full European-wide one. And those countries worked really hard to get the safety standards in. There is social distancing. There are squared off nets on the pools of those great resorts. There is mask wearing. There are restaurants. And all of that's been gone through. And then we have what we saw over the weekend. And the real problem is that it's being left, if people are doing what they're told. They sat through the lockdown, they did all the things, they grumbled a bit. But now it's almost like it's been left up to them, and they're being blamed for decisions that they're being made, or even criminalised for decisions that they're being made.
How do you mean criminalised? That's a rather strong word.
It's a very strong word, but when you're back into the things like the locator form and the self-isolation, and some of the things that were said on social media about people who had been travelling was as strong as it gets. And the point I'm making is that people aren't going around trying to threaten their families or do things that would put people in danger. They're actually trying to obey the laws. But now we're left in a situation where there isn't the law and
there's no certainty there, I think, is what you're trying to get at. No one knows what you should do. Dr. Holland says do one thing.
It's worse than that, because we have different medical opinions, which Dr. Holland's opinion will carry an immense weight, and he's doing his job. There's no criticism here, by the way. Dr. Holland, he's doing what he's supposed to do.
Indeed.
If he wasn't doing it, people like you would be questioning it, and me. So what he's doing is right, but what is missing is the other side, the checks and balances, which is the risk so great? Is the 13 cases, the Iraqs, the Bangladeshis, the Pakistan, so great that we shut down our inbound tourism industry or prevented getting the little smell of a season? Because that's all that's left out of our summer for the sake of that. Because what's been happening, with more out of the self-isolation requirement, is that the signal has gone all over Europe that Ireland is closed for business. And countries that have even higher infection rates than us are getting the sign that they're open for business. And the German tour operator, Dare, has been contacting its customers saying, we're not sending you to Ireland because it's closed for business.
But isn't there a case to be made, Owen, for the view that says, well, look, for the sake of 1 year, can we not just stay at home?
There is a case to be made to cut off our content, our air routes, our connectivity, all of that in the direst of emergencies. And that's what we were looking at in March. And let's get back to what was the decision in March. What we were looking at was the death toll was huge, but more importantly, from the medical point of view, the surge of cases was going to overwhelm our health service. Our 250 or 280 acute beds were going to be completely
inadequate. And isn't it the fear? Isn't there the latent fear in all of us, Owen, that could happen again?
Absolutely. And that's the scenarios where the big decisions were made within Cabinet and within Infit. Is that the same situation, or are now we tidying up around the edges? And in tidying around the edges, started, messing around in the engine room, which is air activity, which is important. Not just, the bucket and spade in Spain is an easy thing to say. Okay, that's not the most important thing in the world, but our cargo flights, including the PPE flights, our connectivity, our trade, our jobs, our economy. All of those depend on connectivity, and we're not. The suggestion that nobody's learned anything from this, and we're going back to untraceable, reckless travelling, is not a fair charge to make.
Would you fly to Spain tomorrow for a holiday?
Without hesitation. I was in Mexico, PJ, when the H1 struck. I was one of the last flights out in Air France to Paris, one of the last airlines. But I've flown across Africa at the time of Ebola. I've worn the face mask. I've been in airports where I was temperature checked. It's like all travel. You measure your risks against the service or the rewards. And what it doesn't work in those circumstances is something very blunt, like 14-day self-isolation for everybody coming in, not mandatory because it's not legally enforceable. The locator form is a great idea, and tracing people is. Cutting off air routes, that happened in Africa. That happened with the Ebola countries. It ruined the economy of 3 countries. They're still recovering 4 years later. That's what people trying to react.
Did you go to use the word overreaction there, Owen?
I was going to use the word overreaction, and I reconsidered, PJ, because people would say the overreaction, which I saw. All the airlines dropped, except one, to their credit, Brussels Airlines, dropped the West African routes. You couldn't get in and out of the country. Their economies were ruined. That possibly was an overreaction, but I withdrew from saying that, as you picked up, because people would equate it to what's going on in Ireland. There's no way I would say that what Tony Hullen's proposing is an overreaction.
Okay.
But if we are in the business of tinkering with our airline connectivity, our transport, our leisure industry, our business industry, they're two are intertwined. And even the leisure is important because there are 200,000 jobs at stake here from the inbound tourism. And it is not justified by the risk.
Okay. All right. Listen.
There's no doubt that opening up the routes will bring cases in. That's what happens. But where is the risk versus the overall damage? And this includes, PJ, important damage to the health service. The health services in the Ebola countries were devastated. The doctors all left. They're still picking up the pieces. DR Congo is still going through the Ebola. So what we look at is where is how great is the risk?
Do you believe there's a happy medium to be reached between what the scientists want and what the public wants and what the government wants?
We don't even need a happy medium. We just want the checks and balances in place.
All right. I will leave it there for now.
At the weekend.
The
checks and balances were lost.
Okay. Owen, leave it there for now. Thank you very much. That's Eoghan Corry from Air and Travel magazine.
Cork's 96 FM.